Hello everyone, today we will be talking about Pleasure Craft Project Analysis by Brianna Anderson, Sandra Brown, Gina Davis Lynch, and Shelley Jessup. Okay, so just a high overview of who Pleasure Craft is. They are a manufacturing company of snowmobiles and personal watercraft. They have been operating in Canada for over 40 years. They have sold both domestically and internationally. The company has been very successful in their financial growth opportunities within this market, but now they're wanting to focus on maybe expanding and potentially growing into different markets. And that's where my group has really come together and really analyzed the company and seen where they will have potential areas of growth and which one will be more beneficial for them. One of the options that was considered is outboard motors. This would allow Pleasurecraft to remain in the current market and work on established relationships with their clients. They would be able to capitalize on establishing bargain powers with their current suppliers, which in result will result in them saving time, money, and provide a competitive advantage for them. Outboard motors will provide a high recovery rate while in lakes, rivers, and even oceans. Pleasurecraft expansion would prove to be beneficial as well due to the concerns surrounding the personal watercraft safety, many of which you have already heard. The outboard power of the outboard motors have seen a dramatic growth in engine sales. In fact, 4 out of 5 of the powerboats sold are powered by the outboard engine. Buyers are wanting more amenities, which is driving boat prices to get bigger, more expensive, with the need for better performance. This need for larger horsepower is driving sales for multi-engines. New technology allows for the animation and easier operation in outboard motors, which all ages are demanding. This innovation will allow manufacturers to give the buyers what they are demanding and will allow for continued growth in sales. The demand for the boat industry will allow Pleasurecraft to grow rapidly if the product is developed, implemented, and marketed correctly. The competitive analysis for outboard motors included leading manufacturing companies such as Yamaha Motor Corporation, Suzuki Motor Corporation, Bombardier Recreational Products, and Honda Motor Company, just to name a few. The demand for motors worldwide declined for Yamaha in 2014. Yamaha was an established motorized sports company that decided to expand their products in North America. They were founded in 1977. Yamaha was the leading manufacturer in this fiscal year between 2015 and 2016, with a generated income revenue of $2,700 million in US dollars. Bombardier was leading behind them at $304 million and Suzuki at $79 million. This was an increase in net sales in North America and accounted for 19% of Yamaha Motors' total revenue. The company saw a major increase in large outboard motors in 2014. Bombardier generated 1.8 billion Canada dollars in 2018. The company produces personal watercrafts, snowmobiles, and engines for outboard jets and boats. Bombardier had increased their revenue just within a year. Another option that Pleasurecraft had considered expanding into was the front-end loaders. This one will prove to be a little bit more challenging just because they would have to step outside of their market. The front end loaders will be sold to construction companies, farmers, ranchers, the military, the government, through the local heavy equipment realtors. Although Pleasurecraft does have experience with small engineering manufacturing, the company does not have the sales experience with the required information above. Not only will Pleasurecraft have to invest in property, They will have to invest in plants, equipment, but additional networking capital as well will be required. The construction machinery manufacturers sell the equipment to customers in a private as well as public segment. The latter one will be highly dependent on investment efforts undertaken by political decision makers. The competitive analysis for front-end loaders actually looks really good. The machinery market has a small number of large players operating in diverse categories and numerous geographic markets. The large companies serve this market means that the decrease in threats of new entries should be considered to be very weak. Supplier power is also considered to be moderate. Potential substitutes in the market may be from secondhand or rented machineries. And just to paint a picture, the largest construction machinery manufacturing global in 2017, Caterpillar was at 26.64%, while John Deere, being the very last, was at 5.72%. So in conducting a SWOT analysis, we have determined the strengths for Pleasurecraft as having an existing customer base with the snowmobiles and personal watercraft product line. The Pleasurecraft name and reputation has already been established in the leisurecraft market. Pleasurecraft will be able to sell outboard motors through existing realtors, and sales will require no additional staff. Pleasurecraft is already established into international markets. They will bring their knowledge of manufacturing for the product of front-end loaders and outboard motors. A weakness for Pleasurecraft will be competing with established manufacturers of outboard motors, and therefore would need to be utilized every advantage possible in order to be successful. The outboard motors product will require a new factory, land, building, equipment, at a cost of $14 million, and will also require additional networking capital. A weakness for front-end loaders will be selling to a market where they have no sell experience. The front-end loader project will require property, plant, factory, land, equipment at a cost of $17 million. The front-end loader project will be seasonal, whereas the outboard motor project has a high peak in April through June. Pleasurecraft will need to hire national and regional sales managers. In comparison to both of these, they both provide a competitive advantage, but they also will provide a disadvantage as far as financials and having to expand the team and looking into what would truly be a best benefit for them as far as getting new buildings and having to buy additional equipment. Pleasurecraft has the opportunity with existing customers to fully understand what their needs are, so they are able to strengthen the product, continue to show presence and growth in both domestic and international sales, develop strategic growth initiatives that will provide an opportunity for Pleasurecraft to pursue, the continued strong growth in outboard motors in the boating industry, especially in large power boats, will create increased potential for sales for Pleasurecraft. In its current exchange rate will be a threat for Pleasurecraft, however. International regulations and government contract compliances due to safeties that could arise could pose a threat for Pleasurecraft. Economic health impacts from big ticket spending, the demand will depend on consumers' income, will also pose to be a threat for Pleasurecraft. So what is the overall strategy? Pleasurecraft realizes the need for a strategic plan in order to sustain a competitive advantage in this market. The organization will, in some areas, strengthen and weakness and base their decisions on the information obtained in this analysis. Pleasurecraft knowledge in the outboard motors markets will help them achieve a sustainable competitive advantage by preserving what is already theirs. Utilizing the existing sales force in the outboard motor product will allow them to be successful and remain competitive. The front end project will result in higher expenses with hiring and training additional personnel. Pleasurecraft will have to evaluate the strategy through the use of sensitive analysis, break-even analysis, or even scenario analysis, and only invest in products which bring value to the organization. A scenario analysis will allow Pleasurecraft to investigate changes that occur in NPV estimates through changes made in sales and units. The sensitive analysis allow Pleasurecraft to locate extreme risks that can be accomplished by changing only a valuable or other remains constraints determined through the NPV. With a break-even analysis, Pleasurecraft will be able to analyze relationships between sales and profitability, which will allow them to know when they would need to start considering the possibility of losing money. Pleasurecraft will examine all markets related to these projects through the use of SWOT analysis, which will allow them to compare these areas with those of their competitors. This analysis will help them determine where the organization should focus for their attention and determine the best use of their resources. It will also help to determine the best opportunity for the best potential growth of the company. Pleasurecraft financial managers will determine the main source of capital and choose one of the best capital structures that produces the highest value of the lowest costs. They will keep in mind that the cost of the capital that is associated with the investment that they choose for the products will depend on the risk involved. So this is just a very high level outboard motors project overview. This would be over a 20-year period. As you can see, just to build out the new factory, the land would be at 1.2 million. Building it would be at 6.25 million, equipment at 7.5 million. The factory costs would be $6,500,000 annually. Administrative costs would be $175,000 annually. This does require a $1 million overhaul of equipment to keep up with technology trends within the 10 years. Research and development costs of $100,000 each year. So this is a high level overview of the front end loader project overview. It would be over a 15-year period. For the building build out cost, the land will be 1.5 million, the building will be 5.5 million, and equipment will be at 10 million. The non-factory cost is $850,000 annually. Administrative cost is $250,000 annually. It requires hiring the following staff, such as national sales manager, 2 regional sales managers, and 10 sales people. That would cost them roughly around $630,000 annually. So the project analysis recommendation, if you look over here to the left, outboard motors, it is for a 20-year period. The capital investment will be $14 million. The NPV will be at $120 million. The IRR will be at 46.44, and the payback period would only be 2.74 years. If you look over here to the right, front end loaders, the project time is 15 years. The capital investment is a little higher, it's at 17 million, while the NPV is at a predicted negative 6 million. The IRR is at 40.17%, and the payback period would take 4.54 years. The We conducted this analysis through a market and a financial analysis on 2 projects. Based on our findings, we came up with these calculations that kind of paints a clear picture of what will be the highest risk and what would be most beneficial for the company. As you can see, outboard motors would provide the lowest risk. It has significant lower financial capital. It utilizes their own established existing market, suppliers, clients, and they don't have to take any major risk. This will also allow Pleasurecraft to utilize their current sales staff and not have to hire any additional staff. While the front end loaders, it may take a little bit more. Well, it does. The project has to be extended for an additional 15 years. This would heavily impact the NPV as shown here with that negative 6 million and other financial information. Since we are focusing on a 15-year, we did our analysis based on that 15 years. The front end loader market will have very strong competitors. Will be very tough for Pleasurecraft to get in, get established, and actually begin making profit and not be at risk. Evaluation of financing options. This one is very important because when a company is looking into financial opportunities, they have to consider the risk, the income, the control, the timing, and any other possibilities that can pose a threat or aid the company in achieving their overall goal, in expanding into a new market, or just expanding into their current market and developing new equipment. For Pleasurecraft, these 3 options that we came down with, we believe can very much aid the company in achieving the overall goal. However, there are risks associated, so the risk will really be the determining factor of which one will really be a best fit for Pleasurecraft. So starting off over here to the left, equity financing. So with equity financing, you have to consider that Pleasurecraft 1 estimated that within the coming year, they're going to have $20 million in new equity. However, they have not issued new equity within 20 years. So it kind of puts that burden right there of would equity financing really suit to be a best fit for Pleasurecraft. But if they do get that $20 million in new equity, then this would be the perfect route for them. One good thing, well, several good things about equity financing is that it gives you the option for a lump sum of startup cash, which is very beneficial. It helps them expand their company network, so they will aid them in doing that. However, it will require that investors become partial owners of their own company, a stigma that some owners are not willing to give up, and some that see the value of the overall picture and see that it can still be beneficial to give up half ownership, and it can bring in new ideas as well. The next is debit financing. This is from loans from banks, overdrafts, credit cards, or equipment leasing. It is essentially borrowed money that one or a company will have to pay back with a set amount of interest in a set amount of time frame that is usually set by the lender. Interest rate of that loan, it may not be financially realistic for the company to invest in both of their opportunities because the interest rate may get a little too much and may put a financial burden on the overall company. Unlike private loans, due to the accrued interest, Pleasurecraft would be eligible for a tax deduction, which would be good, and it may balance out the fact that they have that high interest rate that they have to pay back. The last one is venture capital. It's expanding your company to raise the capital without the other associated risks of interest rates. It is guaranteed quicker access to resources and other funds. You will lose partial control of the company, similar to that of equity financing, which can be pros and cons built into that. And it does not have to align with the goals and priorities of the company, which was a big factor for me that I felt Pleasurecraft should probably steer away from this one, just because they can come in and they'll give you everything you need, won't be any associated interest, which all of that sounds really good until you get down to the bottom and you realize that they can come in and not agree with your goals and objectives and can start their own and can implement their own due to what they experts feel would make them their money back. So based on these three, we decided that equity financing would be the most beneficial for Pleasurecraft in aiding them in the development of starting their new products.